Hi, everyone. Welcome to The Supply Side. I'm your host, Tony Paquin, CEO of iRemedy. We're on a mission to demystify the intricate world of the global medical supply system and the potential solutions within this vital sector of healthcare. Together with industry insiders and healthcare pros, we're going to dig deep and ask tough questions and maybe, just maybe, find some answers. Let's dive in and explore what's happening on the supply side. But first, don't forget to press that subscribe button. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Supply Side Podcast. Want to welcome today our guest, Dr. Stephen Fox. He's a very good friend, longtime friend, world-renowned cosmetic dentist, and an innovator in dentistry with his office in Manhattan. We're going to talk about all kinds of cool things, but Steve and I have had a number of conversations about the global medical supply chain. But interesting enough, he also has developed quite a few of his own medical products. And in fact, he has a project going right now that I'm sure we'll end up talking about a little bit. So, Steve, please say hello to everybody.
Good afternoon, everybody.
It's great to see your face again. It's been a while since I've been in New York, and I've had an opportunity to break bread with you.
Sure, come back to the Big Apple, and it'll
Yep.
be great to get together again.
So let's start off just a little bit talking about your practice, just kind of lay a little groundwork on your history, because that is a big part of everything that you're doing there. But give us a little background on that before we go off into the product
Sure.
conversations.
Well, by trade, I'm a dentist, and my father was a dentist before me. I thought it was a great profession to get into. I respected him and thought that I would be an important member of the community and could do a lot of good. And then eventually I segued into starting companies. Somehow I had that in my DNA. And I licensed in 1992 a technology from the federal government and the American Dental Association to have the first products to rebuild, restore, and renew tooth structure. And that led to a public company raising $80 million and had very interesting people, including a Nobel Prize winner, dean at Harvard School of Dental Medicine, where I served on the faculty, and the Assistant Surgeon General of the United States. And in the first quarter of 1997, that became the best performing stock in the United States across 3 exchanges by 300%. So it was a
Wow,
great run.
that's a great run with a whole lot of ups and downs, I would imagine, throughout
Oh,
the
sure,
process. Yeah. Was that
sure.
product, was it already developed and approved by the government, or where did you pick up on it?
No, we started with a patent, and eventually we had
Okay.
67 more patents, and
Wow.
that product went into every store in America, 42,000 stores. It was a different time. We didn't have the internet, so it was
Yeah.
all, cable TV, radio, print, and it just changed oral health all over the world. And today, a lot of the products have that calcium product in it that you see in advertisements and on the shelf.
That was a retail product.
Yes,
Right? Yeah.
yes.
Sold through like a Walgreens, drugstores, places like that.
Yes, and there were follow-up products that we didn't get to, but today you see it in professional kits or in cements or in restoring enamel after bleaching. So it led to a lot of other products that came out of the original technology.
Wow. Well, that was a great run. Congratulations on that. That was a big
Thank you.
deal. Yeah.
And then Church and Dwight bought it.
Oh, is that right? That's how they ended up taking over the public company?
Yes.
Yeah. Good. So were you active running the public company, or what were you doing at the
Oh,
time? It's
sure.
kind of hard to be a CEO of a public deal and
Well,
be a dentist at the same time.
well, I would start at 5 o'clock in the morning, get to the gym every day, see some
Yeah.
patients. Every minute counted. When you're an entrepreneur, and in my case in particular, because I had never studied business, I had to learn how to build a bike while I rode it. So that was the school of hard knocks, so to speak, that I went through. But it's a good way to learn. So a lot of it was intuitive. And, I mean, there are CEOs that never went to college or left college. Zuckerberg and Gates are an example. So it's not really about studying business. It's about getting in there, getting your hands dirty, and figuring out how to do it. And most importantly, to surround yourself with great people. I had great people around me, and that helps a lot.
I know, you hear that line all the time. Everybody always talks about that. It wasn't, remember the old line about it's It's not where the bus is going; it's on who's on the bus. I
Well,
was saying they're good to great, but there's a lot to be said for it in the end. I mean, the
sure.
lessons you
Well,
learn over and over.
I
Yeah,
always say you're betting on the jockey or you're betting on the horse. If I had a
yeah,
choice, I would go with the jockey because he'll
yeah,
figure out how to make the horse better.
yeah. So, absolutely. Well, that's the lesson. Still, nonetheless, a public company CEO or leadership and a board in that highly regulated environment while operating a dentistry practice is a pretty big deal. No question about it.
Well, it was 7 days a week and
Yeah. Hmm.
18-hour days, but I loved it. So when you really love what you're doing, you really don't feel it that way.
Excuse me. And then that got taken over. So then you went back to being a dentist at that point, or what happened next?
Yeah, what happened next was I was sitting on my boat smoking a cigar for a year and trying to figure out what I would do with the rest of my life. I had no practice, I had no teaching appointment, I had no company, and I was just enjoying life a little bit. And then I said to myself, well, you're a type A. This is not working out for you. You
Yeah.
like to be in the game. So
Yeah.
I got back into business. I got back into practice. I opened up a practice in Manhattan. And today I see five heads of state, the president of major bracket firms, Academy Award nominees. And regular people too. So it's been very
Yeah.
rewarding. And I divide my time between practice and business.
Yeah. I've always admired that about your practice, though. You got kind of like a who's who list of patients there, but at the same time, you're pretty humble about the way you run it. You service regular people and kind of
Uh,
count them all as patients. Yeah.
Look, everybody puts their pants on one leg at a time.
That's right. Yeah.
So, whether you're the president of the country or the doorman in a building, you're both good human beings, and that's what matters.
Yeah. Yeah. We've talked a lot, of course, about supply chain and medical supply, which is the big issue that we deal with every day. And you've had your own experiences with kind of the globalization aspect of it. I know you've had your staff out kind of working around the world a little bit, getting their own direct sources for products and for the dental practice.
Yes, I began to notice years ago that the costs were very high for supplies. You were dealing with major distributors, and it was an amazing coincidence how their costs were similar. And it narrowed
Hmm.
down to a major group of distributors versus a lot of mom and pops who used to be out there. And then the internet came along, and I said, it seems to be the great equalizer. For instance, with Amazon, people are transitioning very quickly and buying their products like that. Let me take a look and see what's out there. And I found that there was a little bit out there, but I also found that I could buy a machine that was $2,000 here for $100 maybe on the internet. And it dawned on me that this is where the future is going to go. We're going to have platforms that are going to be great for doctors, hospitals, and it will be the great equalizer, I call it. It'll make it more democratic. We'll be able to source our products at the right price, and it'll be a competitive business. It's above my pay grade to figure out the software or to put it together, but I recognized it was coming.
Yeah. So you actually, I think you've had some of your staff out on the internet, buying, and I don't know, did you guys go to Alibaba or what did you end up doing? Because you did
We
buy
went
some
to we
stuff
went
from
to
China.
eBay, we went to
Yeah.
eBay, we went to Amazon, and we began to see over time more and more. It was just beginning to pick up at a fast pace. So I did buy a lot. I mean, I never sacrificed quality for that. If there were certain
Hmm.
major manufacturers, there were times when I had to stick with it. But basically, for uh, products that are being made in China anyway, it was a
Yeah.
way
Yeah.
to go straight to the source instead of
Yeah.
having it marked up 90%.
Yeah, that major manufacturer you're talking about is getting it made in the same factory that everybody
Exactly.
else is getting made in. So,
Exactly. It's
you
it's
know,
just the question of what name goes on the box.
yeah, yeah. We saw this in the consumer world with TVs.
Right.
If you go back 10, 20 years ago, you had your two or three major television manufacturers and flat panels came out and all this. And then it became clear, well, they were all really being built in the exact same factories in
Right.
China, just having different
Right.
logos put on. right?
Exactly.
And to a
Exactly.
certain degree, there's a lot of products, a lot of healthcare medical supply products. I mean, you get into devices or drugs, of course, well, they're highly proprietary designs, still very possibly made in China, very likely made in China. Not quite as generic as your typical consumable medical supply, but nonetheless, all coming from the same place. Yeah.
Well, I once bought a product and I called a major manufacturer and I wasn't getting what I wanted out of the product. And she said to me, "Well, that's a gray market product." I said, "Well, what makes it a gray market product? Your name's on it, your serial number's on it. I just bought it over the border. That's all." I said,
Yeah.
"It's your product. There's nothing gray about it."
Yeah. 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 Funny thing is, too, when you look at packaging like that, and you've got FDA and it's imported for this company and all the various regulatory disclosures. But at the end of the day, it really still doesn't tell you who physically made the product.
No.
Very difficult to track that
Right.
information
Right.
down. Yeah.
And for most of
Yeah.
these products, gauze, cotton rolls, in my profession, saliva ejectors, these aren't products, that it's so important to have a major name on. I mean,
Yeah.
they serve the purpose. So, and as you say, the products are thousands and thousands of products. When I look at a catalog, it's an inch and a half thick.
Right.
So, it's a big world out there with a lot of products.
Yeah. So you speaking of products, you've got one that you started now about, I'm tracking back, it's been at least a year, maybe 2 years to deal with the opioid
Right.
crises
Right.
in this country, which, by the way, is, and of all the problems going on in the world today, that's one that still is just mind boggling. The
It
damage to
is.
this country in terms of people who are suffering. You've had tragic loss of life. And in a lot of this, heroin addiction problem and so forth really starts with the opioid addiction problem. They end
Sure.
up switching to heroin because it's cheaper, unbelievably, right? So that it is just an amazing, horrible problem in this country. I know a couple people work on different solutions, but I know you've got this going, but you and I've never had an opportunity to really talk about, what is that deal and what's that working out
Sure.
like?
Well, let me give you the headline. There are 500 million people with neuropathic chronic pain, from diabetes, shingles, facial pain, chemotherapy in particular,
Hmm.
post-surgical pain. Those people
Yep.
do not have a good drug to help them. Physicians
Yeah.
and dentists are writing placebos, antidepressants, anticonvulsants, and opioids. And the consequence of that is that we have the worst healthcare crisis in the history of the United States, and it's called the opioid crisis. And it continues. Over 100,000 people are dying a year, and it affects 1 in 3 Americans. So it's an enormous problem. So I licensed from Weill Cornell School of Medicine what I think will be the first non-opioid, non-addictive drug for chronic pain. And we have tremendous support from Weill Cornell, originally also from Columbia. And now the NIH has given us close to $6 million in grants. And I'm out there raising capital to continue the testing process to get through FDA approval. We have tremendous people. Once again, I talked about the people involved in any company that are important. We have the former heads of neuroscience at Lilly Merck and Pfizer, the former head of licensing at Harvard, the chief of pain at Boston Children's Hospital and Harvard Medical School, a Nobel Prize winner in chemistry, the former Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle. So we have a tremendous group of people to move this over the finish line. And I hope that we can have an enormous impact on modern medicine.
My read on this is that the healthcare provider side of this discussion would be very much in support of this because they see the tragic side effect. And they've got the patients hitting them up all the time. Hey, I need some hydrocodone. You just did whatever, right? A million different things. And they'll push them for that. And it's kind of semi successful. And they're always, the providers are always feeling the pressure to deal
Right,
with the patient's comfort and
right,
pain, right? Now, the pharma companies, on the other hand, we could have a debate about whether they really want to keep pushing the opioids or not. Of course, they'd say they don't, but financially, we probably see a different reality there. It seems like quite a haul. Like, what all do you have to do to get through the FDA in this situation?
Well, you have to do preclinical testing, and our results have
Yeah.
been tremendous on animals. Safety, efficacy, bioavailability. On every metric, we're hitting the numbers that we should be hitting. So you go through that. We're probably about a year away from an IND, and then you go through phase one, two, and three on human beings. I believe we should get fast track because of the nature of the problem.
Hmm.
It's, I mean, the COVID situation and Operation Warp Speed was done in 30 days. So I can't
Hmm.
imagine that, the government wouldn't want to move it along. And, as far as the pharmaceutical companies, they do what they do. We'll see how they react. But if we provide a blockbuster drug, they're going to hop on board.
Oh, no question about it.
And
Yeah.
the problem is with the physicians and dentists, they just don't have anything good to prescribe.
No.
So this
Right.
vicious cycle continues. The
Yeah.
other problem is that the solution seems to be to give somebody Narcan, the antidote, or another opioid, which is slow releasing, buprenorphine, or I
Yeah.
mean, it's just idiocy. All of these settlements keep going into that, but the money
Hmm.
doesn't go into drug development. So
Yeah.
I have to break through that honestly, that's stupidity.
There's a thing I do bring that up from time to time about Operation Warp Speed. As you know, of course, we were very involved with that. And there's a lot of people on the different sides of that political argument about the vaccine and a lot of details about it. But the fact is, it does demonstrate the government's ability to fast track and to really accelerate something that everybody believed was critically important. I still believe it was critically important.
No doubt.
And yeah, my only thing is, I'm a guy who doesn't really believe we should do too much mandating of vaccines. That's like a whole political conversation. But for those who want it, which I count myself as one of those people, I think that it was really an amazing kind of public-private partnership of some big companies, of course, some small companies, the government. But it does show you that you can fast track. And I mean, that was an unbelievable situation. Look,
Incredible.
you're in the
Incredible.
middle of a pandemic. You've got all kinds of crises occurring, and in a matter of months, there was this innovation that took place. I mean, you bring it up because there are so many people who believe that the FDA just needs to, reconfigure itself on the way that it goes through this approval process for situations like this. Because meanwhile, to your point, 100,000 people a year are dying. It's
Right.
very real. And
Right.
and all the collateral damage to that, not to take away from the tragedy of those 100,000 people, but the impact on their families, on the cost side of that,
It's
on the
enormous.
production side of that. It's just incredibly expensive.
It's
Yeah.
enormous. I
Hmm.
think a few years ago, the statistic was it was 90 billion a year just in the United States. So
Yeah.
around the world,
Yeah.
maybe
Right.
half a trillion. I don't even
Yeah.
know, but
Yeah.
there is tremendous collateral damage, emotional damage. It's a horrible thing to lose somebody in your family or a friend.
Right.
And I
Right.
tell people, look, it's walking into one in three homes, which means look to your left and look to your right. I don't care
Hmm.
how much money you have or how well educated you are. This could walk into your home.
Yeah. You see that when you dig into some of these people who have like a heroin addiction, and you tend to stereotype, right? So you go, oh, there's some, homeless person or whatever derogatory thought you may have about those people. But the fact is, in many cases, they come out of an opioid addiction problem. I mean, you'll have guys who went in for knee surgery and 5 years later they're living on the street with a heroin addiction. It's
And
just tragic.
it
Horrible
doesn't have to be
situation.
heroin. They could just take too many opioids,
Yeah,
or
of
it's
course.
really the
Right.
fentanyl. The fentanyl comes across the border. Only a speck of it can kill you. And you don't hope it never comes to that, but it can. So it's
Hmm.
a myriad of different possibilities.
Well, what happens using the heroin addiction is who knows what heroin is anyhow. Once you get into the illegal drug side of the scenario, you got some guys in a garage mixing up chemicals and they're just using the fentanyl. It's just really really
Very
bad
dangerous.
situation,
Yeah,
very
yeah.
dangerous situation. So Yeah, meanwhile, you've got to raise capital to get through that process.
Of course,
You and I have had many hours of conversation about raising
the thrill
capital.
of it. Yeah, you, you
It's
talk to
hard.
your you talk
Yeah.
to your blue in the face,
Yeah. That's hard
but
work.
somehow you break through, and it's chicken egg, chicken egg, chicken egg. Every time you get a better test, somebody else is interested. Things evolve, they move along, and then you reach a certain inflection point where everybody starts to want to come in.
Yeah.
So it's that evolution that you have to go through. I've been aware of it over 40 years, so I'm used to it. I have the scars all over my body to prove it.
Hmm.
So, you keep working at it, and if you believe in what you're doing, you'll get there.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. You and I have had these conversations about iRemedy, and you always tend to approach it in a fairly positive frame of mind because you sort of lived through it. You know, generated that outcome. Of course, I had a couple of companies prior to this one where, I took the one public on the
Hmm.
NASDAQ and sold another one. And you realize there is an end game. You just got
Right.
to stick to it. It also comes back to innovation. I think that this is still the great American asset is we're
Hmm.
innovators and
No doubt.
entrepreneurs.
No doubt.
I
Yeah.
mean, if you really think about all the great inventions in the world, and that's what the United States really has over every other country in the world. And yeah, we could talk about Israel, or we could pick some really innovative or science-driven countries out there, but there are not very many, that really
We
have the innovation
it, it,
ability.
it, Small business is the engine of this country, and the
Hmm.
innovation is incredible. And and the reward is also there if you want to work hard, and you need some luck too. But look at our measure of success. So
Yeah,
history shows that.
right. Yeah. Yeah, we do as a country, we've had great natural resources. We just have certain advantages that were built into the country and our freedoms and the democracy and so forth. But at the end, and access to financial markets. I mean, there you are living in one of
Right.
the greatest financial markets in the world, right?
No
But
doubt.
but nonetheless, our ability to innovate in this country is what sets us apart. That's really the difference. Is
Sure.
we're a big old fat innovation engine. Is really
Sure.
what it comes down
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So because you need that to tolerate guys like you and I who are always coming up with crazy ideas and then
No
sticking
doubt
to
about
it
it.
for
A-
you know.
and you
Uh,
have to accept failure as part of the process.
oh
That's
yeah,
not everybody
yeah.
is cut out for failure or accepting failure. But I always say I could fail, but I won't quit. And it's really the tenacity that's the major thing to just keep going, to just keep trying, and not give up. There are always the people that'll tell you, "Oh, you can't do it. You don't know how to do it. You don't know
Yeah,
this or you don't know that." Don't listen to them. Keep
yeah,
keep pushing.
yeah. That's the difference. It's the stick to itness. I
Hmm.
think you and I, between us, could probably come up with 50 to 100 times in our lifetime that we should have quit based on what all the logical
Uh,
people would say.
I tell my friends if I go long on a stock, short it.
Yeah, the drug approval process, that's something I've never done. I've always been a technology guy, as you know. This is really my third software
Right.
company. But I have had partners and bankers and a lot of people in the banking community that I work with. And of course, I'm in healthcare and I deal with products. So I'm around this all the time. But man, you want to talk about tenacity,
Very
you
hard to
know?
do.
Yeah,
Very difficult to do. And
yeah.
the odds are stacked against you because, on a statistical basis, very few drugs succeed. It
Hmm.
has to work in the human body. And you have to get the
Yeah,
capital, and you have to go through years of testing and patents and R&D. It's a very complicated thing. But, you know, experience comes into play, and I kind of enjoy all the complications. It's a big chessboard. So they're coming
hmm,
at you in every direction, and it's a dance, but I enjoy the dance.
yeah. Yeah, I use that analogy a lot. I tell my staff, I say, most people don't realize that I've been playing this chess game. I'm about a year down the road on the chess game. So unless you're
Right,
14 moves ahead,
right,
I
right.
probably have already thought about what you're thinking
Exactly.
about.
Right. And then the young
Yeah.
millennial will say, "What do you know?"
Yeah, exactly. It's funny as I have this thing, it's funny as the older you get, you've been around forever, but I think in about 4 or 5 times in my career, which has been a long career,
Mhm.
as you know, there's been like these young Turk groups that come along, right? They usually are Ivy League educated. They're 22 to 26 years old. They're seriously very, very smart. Like they're really bright,
Hmm.
hardworking, right? But they have no experience.
Hmm.
And they may or may not, by the way, be principle driven. That is, that could go either way, just based on who they are. But boy, they step in all full of vim and vigor and think they got
Sure,
it all figured out, and
sure.
then you just kind of
Well,
watch that.
wisdom is a great thing, but I can remember 30 years ago going into a meeting with another doctor, and I pitched probably vigorously, or 35 years ago, and he says, "You know what you remind me of?" And I said, "What?" He says, "A younger me."
And your
He
response
said,
was that a compliment or
"Yeah."
not? That's
He said, "No." He said, "I love you. I love
yeah,
you, kid, but you're me 35 years ago."
yeah.
Because I told him why he was wrong right away.
Right,
And he
right.
might have been right, but
Yeah.
that's what happens over time.
Yeah, well, you got to be enthusiastic. If you're not a
Right,
believer, you got nothing.
right, exactly.
How's this drug you have? How is it different? Like, why is it not
Well,
addictive? I mean, is it a
yeah,
different chemical?
I'll
Yeah.
tell you what makes it non-addictive. Well, first of all, we inhibit something called the HCN1 ion channel. And that's in the peripheral nervous system, which means it's not in the central nervous system. It's not in the brain. Now, that was theoretical, but we proved it recently. We measured the amount of drug that got into the brain versus the periphery, and we essentially are not in the brain. So, therefore,
Hmm.
we can't be addictive. We had our
Uh,
data published a month ago in the British Journal of Anesthesiology, which I'm told is the most prestigious journal in the world. And we laid it all out, 20 pages of data. And on every metric, as I said before, we are hitting it. Uh, so well, in fact, that it scares me a little bit. And
mhm.
I really think that we have something very important. We took a general anesthetic that was safe and effective. We altered it so that it wouldn't cross the blood brain barrier, and we made it into a new drug. So that drug was out there for 35 years in a very safe and effective way. So that gave me a lot of comfort, and that's really what attracted me to the whole thing at the beginning. And now, we just keep moving it along and keep, pushing towards the goal line
So that's the difference, though, huh? So addiction occurs in the brain.
in the brain.
It
In the
kind of
brain,
makes sense. Yeah,
right? There are opioid
yeah,
receptors in the brain, and so
yeah.
we're a non-opioid, non-addictive drug
Right.
for chronic pain, for neuropathic pain. Look, there are people that give up their chemotherapy because they're in so much pain they would rather die.
Hmm.
I have to believe that if there are thousands of drugs and there's Advil and Tylenol and aspirin for acute pain, which is for a few days, that there's no reason why somebody can't make one for more than a few days, a drug for chronic pain. It
Yeah,
seems so obvious to me. And
yeah.
I've experienced a lot. My father had to take Percodan for diabetic pain. He was a surgeon in 2 wars and he couldn't take the pain. And I've seen my office broken into 3 times for these
Mm,
drugs. The OxyContin
yeah.
or the opioids. They break into an office to get it. So, and I knew I was writing prescriptions that really didn't help patients with facial pain. So, on many levels, I've seen this what exists today not work.
Hmm. Yeah. Is that arthritis pain fall into that category? Would that be
Yes,
it? Yeah.
yeah. You get up
Uh-huh.
every morning and you're in
Yeah.
pain every day. It's no
Yeah.
picnic.
That's the thing is my wife, her ring finger actually has a little arthritis. Now, it sounds like a minor thing. Okay. But
Well,
first off, I told her she got too big of a rock. We should just get rid of the diamond, but she didn't want to go with
well,
that.
you'd
But
have to cut her
yeah,
hand off at the wrist to get that rock.
yeah. But you bump into it and she gets like a real
No doubt
pain,
about
right?
it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
uh and then she and I were talking about it over the weekend. And I was saying, well, my older brother, he's got arthritis in his back. And he was telling me
Mhm.
last time I saw him, he said it's incredibly painful.
Right,
And
and
yet, you know,
I'm not
yeah,
negating that, but when you have pain from diabetes or you have
yeah,
pain from
right.
chemotherapy or
Yeah,
shingles, that's
yeah,
real pain. That
right,
is really
exactly.
horrible pain.
Yeah, how's the chemotherapy cause pain? I didn't really realize that that was part of the deal.
Well, I mean, there's damage to the neurons in the peripheral nervous system. This is really the whole hypothesis.
From the chemo
Yeah,
treatment.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
and it hurts like hell.
Yeah. Yeah,
And in
that'd be
fact,
the
yeah, I mean, it can be so bad that while they're having it, if you open a window and a little breeze blows on a patient, that pain could be enormous. They could take a
Really?
hairbrush and go through their hair, and the pain could be
Wow.
enormous.
Wow.
So, you have to measure how much you're getting out of a treatment versus how much pain you're in. Now, our
Mhm.
theory is possible that you could prophylactically, when somebody's going into chemo, maybe give them our drug, and then that could give them enough uh, on the plus side to get them through
Relief.
the
Yeah.
chemotherapy. Right.
Yeah.
So it's all a
Yeah.
balance. There's always a balance.
Yeah. Now that's really super interesting. So to get to market, what is the deal like this? This like a 5-year run or what is it? What is
Well,
it like?
generally, it's at least it's good 5, 6 years to get
Yeah.
through FDA approval for
Is
a
that
drug.
mainly an FDA problem? I mean, what is the real?
Well,
I
no,
mean, legitimately, you got to go through some tests and,
you have to do
yeah,
it the right way. I mean, you don't
yeah,
want to
yeah,
unleash a drug on the public
right,
that's causing damage, so they're
right.
careful. Phase one is safety. Phase two and three are human studies. Before that, it's animals. It's well thought out. But if you have an orphan drug for somebody that's going to die, then why wait? If you could save their life, what have you got to
Yeah,
lose, right?
yeah,
Or if you have
yeah,
a situation where you've got the worst healthcare crisis in the history of the United States, which is the opioid crisis,
right.
it's no time to drag your feet. Let's get to a solution, a drug that works. So there's always that tension between safety and look, every drug has side effects. You're always trying to decide how much good can come out of a drug versus what the side effects are anyway. There's always that balance. So you have to measure it all out and figure out a
Yep.
solution.
Yeah, I wonder how much the lack of an acceptable treatment like this, ends up driving the fentanyl use downstream, right? You
It's
know,
hard to
it,
quantify.
it's hard to make that connection, but there's a connection there.
Well,
Yeah.
but when you hear about a kid going into an emergency room who's 18 years old, he injured his foot, and they give him 60 tabs of an opioid, for a month or a 2 day or 2 month supply, you got to wonder who's crazy. Instead
Uh-huh.
of ice on the ankle and some Advil for a few days. I mean, I've
Yeah.
heard so many stories that I can't even tell you. It's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there's the famous story of one of the big distributors was distributing one of the drugs into a community and they delivered more prescriptions than there were people living in that
Well,
county.
money drives a
Yeah.
lot of people to distribute this also.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
capitalism didn't work in a positive way when it came to opioids.
No. Right. And to your point, you don't want to turn around and just become a Narcan solution. That's just,
Well,
another drug
that
on top of another drug.
well, that sounds good. It's an antidote, but if you drop dead on
Right.
the street, you're not going to take it out of your
Yeah.
pocket and spray your nose, right?
Right. Right.
So all of this money in these settlements, which has gone into these antidotes or gone into centers, I mean, it's all fine, but some of it should be allocated to new drugs. I don't see that
Hmm.
happening because that's the real solution.
Right. To stop creating the problem in the first
Right,
place. Yeah.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Don't
Hmm.
accept the problem and keep
Yeah.
treating the problem,
Yeah.
although you have to do that for a while. Get some drugs that eliminate the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause the pain problem's not going to go away.
Never.
Yeah. Yeah.
No. And in
Yeah.
fact, with oncology and chemotherapy, there's more and more of it out there. There are more people with cancer, more drugs. So, the chart goes like this, it scales up. So there are going to be more people in pain, not
Yeah.
less.
Yeah. We have growth in cancer and we have diabetes. Those two
Just
problems aren't
growing.
going anywhere.
Just
Yeah.
growing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because of
Well, it's,
obesity with diabetes. Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Tragic stuff going on there. Podiatrists we deal with all the time, wound care problems. There's
Sure.
just a lot of problems in that area. So once again, you've got yourself, it's like the old line, what another fine mess you've got me
Yeah, here
into.
I
So
go.
yeah,
Here I go again. I'm up at 4 in the morning thinking about it
yeah,
every 7 days a week.
yeah,
You know what, though? I think I'd be bored without it.
yeah.
I'm not a golfer. I need something to do.
I'm doing some remodeling in my house over the weekend. I'm painting a door, and I'm painting this door, and in my mind, I'm thinking through a particular negotiation I'm
There you go.
doing at work. And I'm thinking, am I the only one that's like this crazy that I'm painting
No,
this door?
no,
And, you
no.
know, your mind's
You know,
just kind of rolling
I,
it over
no,
constantly.
I swim every morning, and I always have. By the time I get out of the pool, I have a punch list of things I know I
Yeah,
have to do that day.
yeah. Is that your main workout? You swim every day?
It used to be running, but that got to be
Yeah,
a little hard on my joints.
yeah,
So I now
yeah,
swim 6 days a week, and my day off is to go on a treadmill and lift
yeah.
weights. So
Wow,
I've been exercising 7 days for 40 years.
wow. No
And I think
kidding.
I missed one day in the last 40 years.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's fantastic.
You get
Uh,
104 fever, you got to take the day off. So
how long do you swim?
about
Use a half
35,
hour,
40
30
minutes,
minutes? Yeah,
at least a half
yeah,
hour. Yeah.
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 Now,
Yeah.
how many patients a day are you seeing these days?
Well, now I like to see 6 or 7, or, I
Yeah,
keep it civilized. When I was young,
yeah,
it was 15 a day. I mean,
right.
now I try and keep it, uh,
Keep it sane.
more sane. And that gives
Yeah,
me time to do the business. Yeah.
right, right. The business today, I mean, you're just, I mean, Dave, well, I guess the main thing you have to do is raise the capital to fund the
Of
process.
course. Of
Then you got
course.
to manage the ongoing research, I guess, is the other
Everything.
big activity.
Everything.
Yeah,
But I have a great team at Cornell. The Goldstein
mhm,
lab at Cornell is tremendous. And they're up at Burke also. And they really are just brilliant guys doing the day-to-day work. And it's
yeah,
my job to put it all together, the patent lawyers, SEC lawyers, raising the capital, being out there with IR, PR. The list, as you know, is a mile long, and you just
hmm,
have to navigate your way through all of that.
yeah,
Announcements, it goes on and on and on, using your options as leverage, to bring people in who believe in what you're doing.
yep.
You don't have all the capital. There are a myriad of different possibilities.
Well, the great thing about a deal like that is you've got both mission, and money,
Sure,
right? It's the
sure.
M&M solution.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And you
yeah,
also, you know how important it is, and you don't want to let anybody down.
right,
You just don't
right.
want to let anybody down. And
Hmm,
once you get your friends as investors and people you like and know, you just don't want to let them down.
hmm. Which is and therefore you stick to it.
Right,
That
right.
creates that
Yeah.
perseverance at that point.
It just gets
Hmm,
into your central nervous system, and you
yeah.
got to keep going.
Now, is it the Cornell people that keep? I mean, are they clinically leading, or how's the clinical
Yeah,
side
I
work?
mean, that lab has been going for 10 years. And I
Wow.
was very fortunate that when I found this, they had already been working on it for years and years and years. So I
Hmm,
kind of had an R&D department right away. I had Nuco right away. I was fortunate that way.
yeah.
So, that was the beginning of a group of people who have been on this. I've added and added and added, and I have more people that I'll add. And that's how it evolves. Just, as you keep making progress, you have to keep bringing people in. So, you know what they say, necessity is the mother of invention.
Absolutely. Yep. I agree. Well, I really appreciate you taking some time with us
My
today.
pleasure.
I love the story. We've done so much together, and you're an innovator. You understand the global supply thing that we're in the middle of, and
Sure,
your story around the development of this drug. I mean, that's what I'm back to. I think it's what makes America one of the best countries
it
in the
is.
world. We can
And
do these things,
you
you know.
guys are doing a great job. You've built your platform, you have terrific software. I'm totally comfortable thinking that you're going to change the way doctors buy their supplies in the marketplace around the world. So I think that you're doing something great.
Thank you. We're trying to, the way I describe it is we want to disrupt the medical supply chain, but do
You
it from
are.
within, but do it from inside the industry because we work with
Right.
everybody, right?
Sure.
But, there is a better way. And we saw this. I remember, uh, you and I were sharing numbers about some of the things that you buy, and you buy, I can pay $200 here, or I can pay $20 there. Well, if you pay $200 here, ultimately it's the patient or the payer or somebody
They're
that's going to
paying
pay.
for it.
Yeah, right,
Right.
right.
And the
And
doctors aren't thinking about it. They're focused on their patients, and they just don't focus on what their costs are.
now look,
And it's just not what they do. So,
no, that's exactly right. You get a surgeon, he's got 5 surgeries or 2 or 3 surgeries he's
yeah,
going to
I
do
mean,
tomorrow. He's not thinking about his
no,
cost of goods. Yeah,
no,
yeah. But we have to address it if we're going to get our healthcare costs manageable in this
absolutely.
country.
It's
And
out
we,
of
we
control.
really have
Yeah.
not reinvented the supply chain, uh, probably for 30 years, 40 years. Really, at the beginning of the globalization movement was really the
Right.
last time there was a big change. Now we're going to go through like a deglobalization movement where we're going to see a redomestication and things moving onshore or friendly countries. There's going to be a lot of changes in the supply chain. So, yeah,
Sure.
we're excited to be a part of it. We always appreciate you being involved and helping us along the way.
Any way I
So,
can. I believe in
yeah.
it.
Well, again, thank you for joining us. I'd like to
My pleasure.
remind everybody to tune in for our next episode. And in YouTube, scroll down and like this video. We would appreciate that very much. So, again, Stephen, thank you.
All
Have
right.
a
Have a great
great
day.
rest of your day.
All right. Be well. Bye.
Thank you for joining us today on the supply side. I'm Tony Paquin, and it's been a pleasure sharing insights and engaging in these critical discussions about the healthcare industry. I hope we're leaving you with some new ideas to ponder. Remember, positive change begins with understanding and dialogue. Make sure to join us for our next episode as we further explore the dynamics of the global medical supply chain and its impact on our country. Until then, stay safe and stay informed, and let's keep making a difference.